focus on Liberia. Yeah. From Cape Mount to Cape Palmer, mountain back to Atlantic Ocean, Obomi Hills to Bokonjre, to educate, elevate, and promote. Talk about home affairs, hey, in diaspora, current affairs, hey, reliable information, history, talking about culture, hey, politics, education, entertainment, business, sports, advertisement, articulation. Focus on Liberia. Focus on Liberia. Focus on Liberia.
At Focus on Liberia, we discuss everything Liberia. From education to politics, arts and culture, entertainment, agriculture, history, religion, family, and technology. Focus on Liberia uncovers and showcases the best of Liberia and shows the world the truth about Liberia. We educate, elevate, and promote all things Liberia. We conduct interviews, panel discussions, debates, and more. Tune in to Focus on Liberia on Facebook and YouTube and be a part of the stories that make up the news.
This is Focus on Liberia, and I am Dennis Jah.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another session of Focus on Liberia. I am your co-host, Gabriel Carter. Today, I have in the studio with me my usual suspect, Jimmy and Larry. Guys, welcome. We have a lot to talk about today. Today, we're going to be looking at the new economic issues or challenges facing the new administration, or you can say Liberia as a whole. So there's a lot to talk about, but let me let you guys, chime in a little bit, introduce yourself. I know we don't, there's no need for that before I go off the list here.
Okay. Hey, folks out there in Focus on Liberia land. This is Jimmy Eastman. Merry Christmas to all of y'all. We're all looking for you guys to have a safe, loving, and peaceful holiday. Don't break the bank. There's still next year to go, but definitely know what the meaning of the season is, and it's a time to celebrate your family, celebrate each other. But we got a lot to talk about. Next year is like a new birth. We have an opportunity to do it better once again, and let's see how we will approach it and see if it will get better. Lara, hand it to you.
Yeah, just a brief word. I mean, you say happy holidays, but there's so many people out there who are going through some tough times right now. Mm-hmm. You see what's going on with over in Israel, Hamas. You see what's going on in other parts of sub-Saharan Africa. See what's going on over in Ukraine and Russia. So while we are celebrating, we still need to pray for peace. And we still need to pray for those folks who, even back in our homeland, do not have one square meal. Let's see if we can put together some agenda. Hopefully the administration coming in will focus on some of those, what people like to term the bread and butter issues, right? So hopefully we'll focus on those issues and be able to guide the hands of the people who are coming in and let them see if they can do right by the Liberian people.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Perfect. Perfect. So as I stated, we have a lot to talk about today. Maybe let me just go over the list here. We want to talk about first the draft budget, the 2024 draft budget, which came in at a mere 625 or 624. And then we there was a recast budget for 2023. So we're going to talk about that, what that means, why it was recast. I mean, we've covered that plenty of time, but we just want to go over that as well. And then we're going to talk about also the MCC, um, you know, even though we passed the MCC scorecard, we didn't get the compact grant. Why? What was the decision behind that? Was it political, or we just didn't do well, contrary to what we thought we did. So that's that. There's also was a ban on the rubber exportation by WIA, and without even going too much into that, some of the things that he's doing right now, but right about the time he's about to exit, seems like things he's supposed to do. But anyways, then we have the HPX and the Asalametal agreement, the deal, what is it, $37 million debacle. We're going to talk about that as well. And then last but not least, we're going to talk about the presidential visit to the United States uh, of the president-elect, Jose Nyeman Boyka, his meeting with the IMF, the World Bank, the USAID, and all of these multilateral development banks or multilateral partners, what that means, how is that going to help his agenda? So that's what we have on the menu for you today. As we always you like to say, come with your comments, questions, perspectives. We love perspectives. And let's have a great discussion. Um, so without further ado, do you guys have anything to add to that before we jump into this? Any opening thoughts or anything on your mind before we jump into this real quick?
I'm good.
No, Jimmy.
Let's go. Let's rock and roll.
Okay. All right. So I wanted to. I know I didn't. I will be honest here. I didn't have the time to really. I don't think it was passed because I went on the website. I didn't see it there, so I know it wasn't put up. But I know it was actually published in the front page Africa uh, as an article, the 24 national draft budget. What I wanted us to do is to compare it to the recast budget and what that means. So let me share this here. Hopefully I can go back. Okay. All right. So here is the abridged recast 2023 budget. So initially I think we covered it on the show. It was almost 800 million. Uh, and now it's actually been revised or recasted to, 50 million, or you can say 40 million short to 759 million. Um, and the next slide here is actually what those, actually, yeah, this is what it was spent on right here, right there, the expenditure. So you guys can take a look at that, right? So it's 600 and, sorry, I keep going back to the 600 number. 296 million. Let's say you can round it up to 297 million on expenditure or reoccurring expenditure. Uh, use of goods and services, 107 million. We have subsidies and 10 million. And we have grants. Um, let's leave it at 77 million. Social benefits, 17 million if you round it up. I hope you're catching up with my roundup here, because I like.
No, that's good. I like what you're doing. Yeah, that's good.
I don't want to confuse some people. Say you have to say the exact number. So the non-financial assets we have 200 and 152 million, and then domestic liabilities we have 43, and foreign, whatever that is. I think I may have cut that up to with that's 56 million. Now, so here, the next slide here is a little breakdown of those what do you call it, sector summary, whatever they spend on those sectors, right? The health, social development services, education, um, energy, agriculture, infrastructure. So we can talk about that. We can talk about this, right? Or we can do a contrast, right, between that and the 2024 the draft budget. As I said, we didn't have the figure, so I took this article right out of the front page. So technically, what is actually in that budget is the draft 2024 draft budget is 600 and actually, yeah, I was right. 620, 26 million, just round it up, right? And that is, okay, so 620, 623 or 99% of it is projected. So almost all of it is coming from domestic, all of it. Now, from what we're used to, I think usually a third, well, not a third, 1/3 of our budget usually comes from external expenditure. I mean, external sources, but this one, there's really nothing coming from external sources. So we can talk about that as well. So what are your thoughts? You can actually speak to this, the draft recast, I mean, the recast budget, or you can do a contrast of the two. What are your thoughts on that? Jimmy or Larry? I mean, Jimmy or Larry?
You can hear me now?
Yeah.
I was on mute. Okay. I like the second page you brought up. It's a better breakdown. In fact, because speaking to this, I can't really identify anything here to analyze. But the second page, one thing is glaring right at me, and it's that security and rule of law.
Mm-hmm.
It's about 98 million in the recast. Okay, I remember nine, round it up to 99 if you want to.
Yep.
And I'm asking myself, what in security and the rule of law have we seen? What has been transparent? What has been a significant investment or something visible that we can say, yeah, we spent $100 million on this? And when it comes to that, because we know that there's lack of logistics for the police. Okay, we're well aware of that. They cannot go on in cases unless you finance their way. You have to pay for the logistics. We also noticed there were several incidences of deaths and other incidents, and we don't see how the security forces were able to address it. So, in economics, when you spend on security, is one of those things that's not directly productive, but if you don't have security, you could lose everything. So it's a funny thing. It doesn't contribute to or generate income, but at the same time, if you don't have it, you could lose your capital and principal. So you need it. But my thing is, I don't see anything very significant that we've that can show to justify that large amount spent on security. Yeah. I stand to be corrected, though. You guys?
Yeah. So Jimmy, Larry, let me pose this question to you. As you look, at this budget, I think we covered it when it came out earlier this year, and you now see that it has been recast, but not the fact that it's been recast, but what has transpired throughout since it was released initially into this recast. Is there any surprises here that this was recast? And if any, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so first of all, Gabriel, I appreciate you going through the work to put this stuff out there so people can really see it and try to make sense of it. Because here's the thing: the budget is nonsense, right? It's not realistic. Let's be fair, because we know the economy under the outgoing administration, they didn't do enough to kind of generate the type of revenue that would be able to support this budget. So buried somewhere in this budget would be a request. You probably don't have it, but there's a request for donor funding. They're expecting almost about a quarter of, I think around 247 or 250 million or so, unless they changed it. But pretty much embedded somewhere in this budget was expected. They were expecting some type of a donor grant and financing to come in, because it's not realistic. We know they were never going to raise that much revenue, because they just don't have enough economic activity taking place on the ground to make that happen. Another thing you will see quickly on this budget is we have our priorities upside down. We're spending so much in terms of paying salaries, in terms of paying all of these little expenses. We have a bloated budget that is just spent on civil servants pay, on a whole lot of nonsense, you know? So it tells us our priority that should be focused on growth, because by boosting what we call aggregate demand, doing things like infrastructure projects, investing in early childhood education, investing in the education sector, putting money into healthcare and agriculture, all those things then that will lead to job creation onshore, you know, in Liberia, it's not reflected in this budget. So no wonder when you see any sign of economic growth, it's in the extractive sectors. It's in the stuff that Metal, Steel, and all these other companies are doing. That's why when these companies leave, Liberia tends to suffer, because we don't have a diversified economy. So the budget is a fiasco. It's not realistic, right? So when they recast it, it's simply saying, okay, we realize that we got ambitious. We put such a big lie out there. Let's see if we can minimize it just a little bit with this recast. But the recast is still not realistic, because what happens is they end up with a budget shortfall. And then they try to close that gap with some type of a borrowing. You know, it's just a big fiasco. It's this thing that have gone on repeatedly for 6 years. And now hopefully we're seeing it come to an end. Hopefully there'll be something more realistic happening, right? As opposed to someone putting a fantasy budget out there.
And I agree with both of you. It is in as much, I think we talk about this sometimes. I feel as if we're beating a dead horse here. But my thoughts are always, or the responsibility. I almost always want to relegate that to the representatives and the senators in the House. That just as you and Jimmy have just picked this thing apart, say, hey, we just look at this thing and it seemed too, ambitious, to, the government's over. Does anybody? There's 73 House of Representatives in the legislature. Does anybody else see it that way? Does anybody see it that way? Like the way you're looking at it, to say, hey, I understand this is a little ambitious, but someone to speak up as much as you guys are, just as you guys are, right? To question these things and say, hey, are we too ambitious here? Do we have the ability to meet this budget demand that we're putting out here? Besides just being now, and that's one point. Do you guys think there's also a political aspect to this as well? I don't want to dive into that, but do you guys think there's a little political aspect to say, hey, we're just going to put this thing out there because nobody questions it? It kind of gives us a little bit of political momentum to say, hey, we've put out the biggest budget since the next administration. Do you think there's a little political aspect to this as well?
Yeah, if I could, let's go back to the fundamentals though.
Right.
After they proposed this budget, the legislature is there for oversight. Okay.
Right.
And they are invested with the power. If they don't see the ministries performing the way they should, they can call in these ministers and ask them. So each one of these sectors, there should be someone assigned from the legislature on their details. Okay, so that they can assure us that the monies are going where they need to go, that we are putting money in the right direction. So, when I say go back to the fundamentals, does it even are they designed? Are they built to do that? Are they actually doing that? Because if you're not following up on this and you're just giving us a document and allowing the executive branch to just go on without scrutiny and detailed oversight, then you don't expect to get anything. So I think your question is in place that are they actually fulfilling their roles over there to the point that we know we're having the oversight we need? I gotta question that. Larry, go ahead.
Larry.
No, you see, the problem is, and Jimmy is on point, right? So the problem is the legislators, I don't know if they do have the right staff or they have the right people in place who can actually do the research, analyze this stuff, and then advise them. But even the legislator themselves needs to do their own homework, right? Because all you have to do is just look at some of the previous budgets and see how much in terms of a shortfall it came out. But another fundamental problem is some of the numbers, I don't even know how legit some of these numbers are, because there are instances where the Ministry of Finance is like being a player and a referee in the same game, kind of generating some of these numbers that is not based on any factual evidence or any data whatsoever. It's like they're just plucking it out of a hat. So some of these numbers can just be, absolute nonsense. But to Jimmy's point, you definitely want to see if the legislative staffers, if they have the requisite knowledge to take a look at this stuff and advise their bosses, right? Or even the legislators, if they can take a look at it and say, okay, listen, this thing just doesn't make any sense. We're putting way too much money over here or less money over here. And historically, we haven't seen any evidence of this thing working, right? But here's the thing. All budget shortfalls are not necessarily that bad.
Yeah.
But in certain places, certain instances, certain countries, they have the ability to issue what we call financial instruments to close that budget deficit or that gap.
Absolutely.
Simply because they have a very strong economy. Japan, they have multiple budget shortfalls. The U.S. definitely have a ton of budget shortfalls. The last time the U.S. balanced a budget was probably like 1971 or something like that, right? But the U.S. dollar is very strong.
Yeah, it was the last time we had a budget balance in this country. I think was with Bill Clinton. He left a surplus.
He was the only one. He had a surplus. Yeah.
They always come up with a shortfall.
After that, yeah.
But when they do have those shortfall, what do? They go after the capital markets. They ask the Federal Reserve Bank or the Treasury to go ahead and issue U.S. Treasury to raise money to close that gap. They can do that because they print U.S. dollars, which is the strongest currency out there. Yeah. We don't have that privilege, right? So we need to be more surgical when it comes to how we create our budget.
Right. And to add to what you said previously, Larry, you got to put money where you're going to generate money. There is absolutely no way to put money somewhere that, like I was saying about security, even I don't even see it happening. But you can't if you want to grow the economy, you got to be thinking about industry and commerce. You got to be thinking about education and human capacity building. Just what you were saying. And if you're not putting enough there, next year you think you're going to have more. Where do you think going to get this extra growth and development from? Where is it going to come from? Because you haven't invested. How do you expect to get it if you don't invest it?
And to that point, Jimmy, that's exactly what got Ghana in trouble. Ghana, a few years ago, was able to raise billions of dollars, $3 billion from the sovereign debt market, right? Being able to go to the sovereign debt market and borrow that money because Ghana had very good credit ratings. But the problem was Ghana didn't take that money to borrow and put it into investments to create jobs that would lead to income generation, that would lead to people then earning income to pay taxes and lead to revenue generation. They didn't do that. They ended up doing all these white elephant projects that didn't generate any revenue. And what happened, they couldn't make their debt payments. And when you miss your debt payment, your credit ratings drop. What did they end up doing? They end up running to the IMF for a bailout package. So to the thing you just mentioned, if you're going to raise money through revenue or through or somewhere in your budget, you got to put it into something that would lead to growth in your economy. We don't see that in the budget. We don't see stuff in there enough as a percentage of GDP, enough money in the budget for education. You know, education was what got a lot of these Asian countries out of the hole.
Yep.
Yeah.
We don't see
Yep.
enough money for infrastructure development. That's not enough money. Most of the money goes to paying salaries, paying cell phone bills, paying a whole lot of nonsense.
Buying
That's
cars
not
for
revenue.
yeah.
All right. So that's a great point. Let's move on to the draft 2024. So while you guys were talking, I was doing sorry, I wasn't paying attention too much. I was doing some numbers crunching in the background here because I didn't have the time. So we have I think as I said earlier, we have a very low budget compared to, draft budget compared to what we had
Last
in
year's.
compared to last year, right? I think I didn't that's it varies from 759 to 625 right now, right? And 99% of that is coming from domestic, which is good, right? If we were at 800 million and 99% was coming from domestic, I would be excited. That means there's, you know, you know, if we are able to meet at the end of the year, that means there's some level of productivity going on within the economy itself, as opposed to rely on external sources. This one, there's only 2.43 million coming from external sources, right? However, if you look down here, it's a little bit concerning. So we're now at let's say $81 million debt service out of that 625 million, which is, I crunched the number here, if my math is right, that is 12% of the budget
Yeah. Sounds
that we're
about right.
collecting is 12% is being paid on debt service. Another 49% or 308 million goes towards reoccurring expenditure. This is pretty much what we've had the entire 6 or maybe 18 years so far, right? This is the same trend, and I think you guys continue to talk about it. What are your thoughts on that, especially maybe on the debt aspect part, what the debt servicing has now grown to $81 million?
This thing is alarming, if you ask me. Larry, just let me go just quick before you come in. Are you telling us that the economy shrank? Because if you're generating, you have a smaller budget than you did last year. I'm going to ask you, do we see a shrink in the economy? Okay, and I'm going to ask you, give the reasons. I'm going to summon the finance minister, because he's right now the finance minister and the planning person are one and the same. I'm going to summon you. It means you're not doing your job, or explain to me the circumstances that got us where we are. We're getting less and less and less, and it means we're going in the wrong direction. I don't understand, because now there's no COVID. Okay, there was a time when COVID affected all the markets. Okay, it's not a COVID to cling. So what is justifying a shrinkage in our economic activity? And then lastly, before you come in, when you talk about those domestic revenue coming in, I'm gonna be very particular about how much of that is off tariffs from imported goods. Because if you're just taxing imports, and that's where you're getting the bulk, that means there's not enough economic activity. Where if you got businesses running and they're paying taxes on their revenue, and that's where you're getting most of it, then you're doing something. But if you're only taxing, if you're only getting generating most of your income coming from imported goods, they're telling me two things. One is, well, there's a flight of capital in the country, huge flight of capital, which we already know. And two, you're not doing enough. That you're going in the wrong direction. You want to go to the point that you export more than you import, or you are going further and further and further into debt. Go ahead, Larry.
Yeah, great point, Jimmy. So here's the thing. I think I mentioned this maybe about a year or so ago, either on FOL or maybe in an article or something I wrote, that Liberia is at a risk of debt default, right? Because the amount of debt they owed as a percentage of GDP was way too high. Same thing, Ghana, the amount of money that Ghana owed as a percentage, all of the total production in the country, the amount of money Ghana owed was way too high, and it did default on the debt. Liberia was in the same situation. And we saw that they weren't able to make some debt payments. And I think it was the World Bank or the IMF or one of these supranational institutions that suspended them from tapping into some of the accounts that they held. I think it was the World Bank. But like, since this administration came in, they have been borrowing heavily and haven't been putting that money into activities to grow the domestic economy, not the economy that has to do with the rubber and all that, the domestic economy that will lead to job creation. They never invested heavily in that, right? No wonder they were, when COVID hit, like in March of 2020, the IMF was offering like a debt repayment suspension to several countries. And the letter is on, the IMF's website, or you can go there and check it out. Out of all the countries in sub-Saharan Africa, I believe Botswana was the only one who didn't accept that waiver because Botswana was sitting pretty. But Liberia accepted it because why? We have been borrowing money and we weren't generating enough revenue to be able to make those debt payments. And it probably, as soon as you look, the thing about borrowing money from these supranational banks, whether it's the AFDB, the Asian Development Bank, the World Bank, when you borrow money, it's not like something where I can go say, hey, my man, Jimmy, let me just skip debt payment today. No, they don't care because why? Some of that money is coming from investors on Wall Street.
Yeah.
Because the World Bank sells these bonds, these World Bank bonds, and those are investors on Wall Street. They want to get their payments. So when you miss these payments, your credit rating, which we don't have none anyway, but the credit rating with the World Bank and the IMF, it is shot. That means you can't borrow money. So where are you going to go now to borrow money? You can't go to the sovereign debt market. Because when you check Moody's, Fitch, Investor Services, and all these other investment services, we don't have a credit rating. The only place we can borrow money from is like maybe the AFDB, the African Development Bank, the World Bank, or the IMF. But now, if they suspend lending you money, you're out of luck.
Yeah.
This 2024 budget, I think the best place to put it would probably be, you roll it up and you flush it because it is absolute nonsense. And I think Flomo Livingstone made a great point.
Yeah.
Why in the hell with the outgoing administration that had some of the largest budget shortfall put together a budget for the incoming administration? It's like it's setting you up for failure, right? So that's the problem when you have, that's the problem when you have a fiscal calendar as opposed to a calendar, going with a calendar year, because in most places with a fiscal calendar, you have until July 1st or so, depending on your region, to come up with your budget for that administration. So switching to a calendar year, it makes it hard for the incoming administration to have a budget ready. But what they should have or could have been doing, probably they should have huddled up and have somebody working on this thing. You don't wait until the last minute because they should have known this was going to happen. So they should have had people cooking this stuff up a long time and then say, well, listen, I don't know if they have to do a recast or they have to do something, but this budget is absolute nonsense. It's dropped over close to 200 million, but it is still not legitimate. It is still not legitimate. You can't show me where you're going to generate all this much money. There is a way to generate the money, but it's not in this budget. I mean, I can tell you several ways you can generate it, legitimately generate it, but it's not buried in this budget. Grants and stuff in the World Bank and IMF is not going to do it.
Right. And I think there's some constitutional obligation they have to come up with a budget. And just like you say, if they change the fiscal period a little bit, this wouldn't happen. But there's a saying, men make rules. Men were not made for rules. Okay. So I'm saying that because, yeah, you needed, the law says you had to bring in a budget. But given the circumstances, given the performance of the past administration, given the discrepancies we've seen, given the inconsistencies and lack of justification for a lot of things, I hear that they've been summoning the finance minister several times that he has not appeared. Given all these things going on, you put a halt on it. Say, okay, you know what? This situation is different. We'll wait to have a budget maybe February or late January, and then we'll go in and have a session to approve it. Maybe do some stopgap measures to take us over to for the month. But they don't have to accept this, but the way it is, because there's the issues. You already see blatant issues with it without even going in detail.
Yeah. And I think you guys made some very salient points. I think Larry touched on something as that the reason why the IMFs, the World Bank, the USAIDs of the world is not going to do it for us. Because if you look at all of our budgets, previous budgets, right, there's been at least, I think the last one, this one, the 2023, there was 150 million of external that came from outside. And just because that 150 million, we didn't get it this year, we have a budget that is significantly low, meaning that if we start being spoon fed, we cannot do for self. Now we're at a place where the incoming president realizes that he is scrambling at the World Bank, at the IMF, the USAID to make sure he gets those, extra external sources back in. Now, and this has been in perpetuity up until now. The question becomes, I think, Larry, maybe I want to pick your brain here. You mentioned something you can, you guys can give us some, means or ways to be able to come up with a, alternative means to raise budget that is, sustainable, as opposed to one way we constantly rely on, these MDBs.
You have to start with it's like facing the elephant in the room. You have to start with the most obvious thing. You have to face your credit ratings. It's fixable, because if you don't fix it, eventually the other avenues of raising money is going to dry up. You can't raise money and develop your country through concession agreements. It's never worked. I haven't seen it work. It's never, and I don't believe Liberia is going to be the first one to develop based on concession agreement. Because what happens with concession agreement is you don't know the true value of your resources that you've given concessions to.
Yeah.
People like Mittal Steel, for example. If you check Mittal Steel, the stock over the past 5 years have been doing extremely well, especially when Mittal Steel signed that contract with Liberia in order to do one of the largest iron ore production. That stock shot up during that period. If you go and check the stock performance. Because why? Investors realized that Mittal Steel was going to be pulling billions and billions of dollars worth of iron ore out of Liberia, while Liberia was going to be receiving, on average, maybe around $2 to $3 million. Think about it. You're receiving around $2 to $3 million per year, while this company is in here pulling out billions. It's like me telling you, hey, Gabriel, do you feel lucky? Tell you what, give me $1,000. I'll give you $3 this year as payment for your $1,000. It's absolute nonsense, but that is what's happening. Concession agreements also give investors extraterritorial rights, meaning if you don't live up to it, they can sue you in international courts. And in international courts, your poor little country doesn't stand a chance of winning.
Yeah.
They're bringing in high-profile lawyers. Why? Because they have your signature in ink on a document, and now you're trying to renege, so they will nail you. So you get extraterritorial rights that if they were just coming in to set up the manufacturing and do everything right there in your country, they would have to work under your laws. Concession agreements haven't worked. They're a stopgap measure, right?
Yeah.
You put a little Band-Aid on this sore temporarily until you probably have some stitches or something. So you have to fix your credit ratings with a 3 credit bureau. And what does that entail? It means the rule of law is paramount because the credit bureau look to see how stable your country is. So they're looking at the rule of law. You can't have people then, ministers being sanctioned left and right, and then expect to have good credit rating. You know,
Right.
you can't. It's not going to happen. You got your economy has to be stable. You have bottom line. You got to take the time and work on your credit rating. While you're cooking up on your credit rating, then you can start tapping into some of those tactical, because the credit rating is strategic, right? It's long term, 10 years and on. It would take a few years, maybe 1 or 2, depending on how much effort you put behind it to get it up and running. But definitely it's the strategic direction you want to take. The typical one now is, okay, I have to go down to Wall Street, or I have to go over to the footsies, right? The British markets.
Yeah.
You have to get in touch with where the money is. And the money is with these ultra high wealth investors, people who are looking for alternative means of investment, people who are willing to take some risk because the reward will be higher. You want to go down to Wall Street to get that money.
Yeah.
So definitely come down to Wall Street, but you know what you can tap right away? What you can tap right away to start raising some of that money? Liberians in the diaspora. Liberians in the diaspora offers a huge opportunity to raise capital in Liberia. But you see, in order for that to work, they have to trust you. Because if I'm coming to sell some type of a financial instrument, they need to be able to trust your government will be able to raise the revenue to pay them the interest on that money they're lending you. So you got to be able to tap the Liberians in the diaspora to come and invest in the country. Don't rely on remittances, because people only use the remittances just for their daily living. But Liberians in diaspora can bring some investments. I'll go down to Wall Street and see if I can create some financial instruments. And then I will revitalize the financial sector in Liberia.
Right.
Opportunities.
That is huge. Yes. And that is, yeah. I think Liberians in the diaspora, that's one of the best places. But again, like Larry was saying, you have to develop competency. People don't trust you because they want to trust you. Only Liberians do that. You don't have to have zero track record, but I trust you to run a government. But you never ran a government. You never ran a store. Only Liberians. Other people, before they trust you, you have to show competence. When they see the competence in you, then they can afford to lend some trust to you. And Liberians in the diaspora have millions to be able to help Liberia through different kind of financial instruments. But what it's going to boil down to, even if Liberians in the diaspora want to help, what are the product offerings that you're making to the outside world, including Liberians, that are going to say, "Oh yeah, that's a good business plan you have there." What are we diversifying our products? Are we improving our the local production to have greater market penetration? You don't see any of that happening. So where are people going to get the confidence to repose in you and give you millions when you're not showing increased capacity? You're not even showing that you have a good idea what can be possible, because a lot of times the idea is what comes first before the people have confidence in you. So you need to come up with strategic plans for the nation that will create strategic partnerships with certain industries, certain companies, and then we bring those markets and things home to Liberia, and we start generating locally to meet those new penetrations and new partnerships and alliances criteria that we have laid out. And so we need people who are going to think out of the box. It can't be, I'm going to borrow. That has never worked. And people have written books and books and books on this. Larry was mentioning something the other day when they come after you. Poor Zambia. Zambia got in with the Chinese. They gave them all kinds of money. Do you know that Chinese have taken over the copper mines, because that's what Zambia has, a lot of copper. They've taken over the copper because they defaulted. So are we doing something different, or are we doing much of the same again? Just borrow on our extracted resources. You know?
Gabriel, before I switch it, Jimmy, before I switch over to Gabriel, this question is actually going to kind of lead over to you, Gabriel. Just give me like 10 seconds to say this, and then you'll be able to pick it back off what I'm about to say.
Yeah.
So I'm mentioning one half of the solution in terms of how you can borrow. The other half is, and Gabriel's a banker, right? He's been doing this for a while, and he knows what bankers are always interested in. He wants to know how the hell they're going to get paid. So if you're going to be lending me money, great. But I, as a banker, want to know, okay, how are you going to pay me? So the other half now is you need the income generation thing over in Liberia, because if you take that money, you just go to some recurring expenditures thing, you're going to end up in worse position than you've ever been. How are you going to generate the income? This is where you come out with a strong plan for things like tourism. You can come up with strong plan, village tourism, things like that, because a lot of the poor people are actually in the villages, not so much in the cities.
Yeah.
You got to come up with tourism to generate that income. You have to be able to come up with developing the construction sector. A lot of Liberians want to go home and build houses, but they're not able to do so because they don't trust contractors, or they don't have all of the cash at one shot. So you need to be able to come up with something similar to like Fannie, Freddie, all these kind of quasi agencies we have over here. You got to be able to do that, right? Because, like Gabriel, bankers are interested in knowing how they're going to get paid.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
No, so without being too long on this, subject, right? On this topic, do you guys? Here's something that I've maybe, and you guys can correct me here if I'm wrong. I don't think we've ever had a president who has figured this thing out, right? Who has come in, look at the economy and realize that this dependency on aid or on these multilateral development banks and it's not sustainable. No president has figured it out. Like, why do you guys think it's that? And like the moment we figure this out, any president who comes in and is able to have that click within their mind that we have been on this trajectory for over 176 years and it hasn't been sustainable, right? We've been literally we're crawling back to these international partners to get us out of this current mess that we're in. No president has figured it out. Why do you guys think is that? And even if you don't have the skill set, let's say I come in, I don't have the skill set. Why is it that they're not able to figure out, build a team to say, okay, this is what I want to do. I want to eventually get us off of aid into a sustainable path where everything that we do, our growth should be generated internally. If we're going to go for aid, let's do that, in a way that we're able to pay back, but it's not something that we need to be able to just continue to it's not something that we're dependent on. Like, why do you guys think is that no president has been able to figure this out? I will go back as far as the Ellen. We glorified her because she came from the World Bank and she even worked Citibank, right? As a banker, you would think this is someone who knows that, right? Before that, there was we had war that was you can't count. Tarbara, I think, had a little bit of inkling on that in terms of to say we have to be self-sufficient. I think he was the only president who had that ability, was able to create over 30 companies and have all these things going on. But besides that, no other president has been able to figure this thing out, and it's kind of baffles me to a point.
Yeah. So
go ahead, Larry.
It goes back to the book written by Acemoglu and Robinson, right? Why Nations Fail. Because when the new leader comes in place, the people who surround this leader, right? The people who surround this leader, they're convincing the leader to select people who are completely incompetent in certain instances, right? Some of these people, because they're probably from the same village, the same tribe, they're probably from the same political parties, they're probably from the same church, maybe they went to school together. So the president ended up selecting these people not based on meritocracy, like what Lee Kuan Yew said that helped to develop Singapore. In terms of what the first president of Botswana said that helped to develop Botswana into a middle class state. They did it based on meritocracy. They did it based on the people's qualification, not based on familial status or, not based on relationships. That's why people have to be able to figure it out, because the leader spent so much time being convinced by his or her handlers to put friendship above country. So they come in and they struggle and can never get out of it. That's what happened to George Weah, putting friends in places that they were completely unqualified to be actually running. Why would someone like Tarlu, who had a degree in public policy, run the central bank? Central bank that is responsible for job creation, for reducing inflation, for making sure your economy is stable. It's embedded directly in the law that created the central bank. You have someone who was a compliance officer at JP Morgan run the central bank. How can he create jobs if he doesn't understand monetary policies?
Yeah.
So that's why these things do not work. When Ebola hit, Madam Sirleaf was interviewed by Katie Couric. The video is out there. Katie Couric asked her, say, you have all of, just what you just mentioned, working at the World Bank, doing all these things. Katie Couric asked her, so, but why do you have your sons in so many key positions in the country? And her response was, well, I'm the same president who who had year-over-year GDP growth. She started talking about GDP growth, which was based on the extractive sectors, but she didn't answer the question of nepotism that was holding the country back. We see it all over the place in Africa. That's why so many African countries do not develop, because the president comes in and is surrounded by people convincing him and her that it's better to put friendship above country. So the president listens to that, put any competent person to go run the major hospital or to go run the airport, and nothing happens. The country does not grow. It doesn't grow at the expected level, based on the resources that it has. That's why it doesn't happen. And I'm open to see that change. And let's see, the new administration comes in. When they put the first set of players out in the field, it would give us a clear picture of the chances of success based on that.
Right. And to what you're saying, yes, Torwick had some ideas, but you need to take a closer examination. And you mentioned the failure of Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. It's one thing knowing the financial procedures and the various type of instruments in use that by the countries go into banks. That's one thing. But what drives a country, what drives an economy is industry. You have to go down to the industry level, encourage industry growth. What Talbot was doing, he had something we call the free zone. Different type of industries were allowed to come here, do business without any taxation. Because what he was trying to do was grow the industry. We now have to grow our industry. Whatever our focus is, it has to be to grow industry. Whether if it's we used to make shoes here. Remember Laramco? We used to make sneakers. We make chairs. We made batteries. Not all industries have shut down today. So we have to go back now and grow our industries again. And we have to create incentives that they will want to come, set up, thrive. It'll give people jobs. And eventually, we need to identify new markets. There are some industries that not everybody is in, not everybody even knows about. You can, if you identify unique opportunities and grow them, that's when we'll see a difference. But it has to be in growing industry. That is where we'll see the jobs. That's just where we'll see the new income. That's where we'll see other related horizontal, lateral, and vertical industries pick up and move along. But if it's not just the financial instruments they have available.
That's without dwelling too much on this. I think that's what he understood. And I think he understood it more than any president. And by the time his term was up, he had 30, companies, major size company in that place. He grew their revenue, I think, from 86 million to 100 and I think 40 or 186 million. So he was very intentional, and he's like you said, he focused on the industry, building industry, because he knew that was what was going to get us out of that, whatever stage we were in. But without further ado, let's move on to the next topic here. So I think we talked about this on another show, but I wanted us to, maybe dive a little deeper into this. All right. We talked about the MCC scorecard, when I think we passed it. Right. I think that was probably, Twitter made a lot of noise about that. We've passed multiple areas, than we've ever passed in the past, right? And supposedly, I think the expectation was that, once you pass, you're supposed to expect some kind of reward. Um, Unfortunately, that never happened. We got excluded, and the reason behind the exclusion was very. I don't know if I'm able to pull it up somewhere. Was very detailed. So hold on, let me see if I can find it somewhere here.
While you're doing that, let me just touch on something Flomo Livingston is asking, and also what
Yeah.
Peter White just mentioned in the chat, because they're
Yeah.
important. Like Flomo Livingston was asking, so what happens if the company, meaning the concession agreement, the company who won the concession, so what happens if that company were to break the concession agreement? It's a contract, Flomo. If you and I have a contract, if we have a contract where I'm supposed to build a school or build a road or build a hospital, if I don't do that, somewhere in the contract would say what the ramifications of breaking the contract would be. And more than likely, you can take me to court and you will win because it's in the contract. So to answer your question, Liberia should have long time ago sue Metal Steel for not. Definitely. And they would have won. You see, but the problem is, if they sue them in, let's say, courts outside of Liberia, 100% chance of winning. If they sue locally, they don't stand a chance of winning. Why? Because we don't have a fair judicial system.
Yeah.
Those companies can come out and bribe jurors. And even though the thing would be broad daylight, the government like Liberia may still end up losing. But you see, the U.S. put something in place called it FCPA, the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. Mm-hmm. So companies, Metal Steel is, I don't want to get too much into international finance, but
Go ahead.
They do business in the U.S. as well. So they can also be susceptible to the U.S. Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. And even the new law that the U.S. passed now, that no matter where you reside, if you're involved in giving and taking bribe, you could be sanctioned. Metal Steel, who is traded also on the New York Stock Exchange, could be hit. But Flomo, the bottom line, Liberia deserved to win a case against them. But we don't sue because we don't trust the judicial system, and more than likely those companies are not paying bribe. I read Metal Steel's response to why they didn't build schools. There was a whole lot of nonsense. Some excuses that just didn't make any sense. But to the point that Peter White also mentioned, Liberia cannot get out of this whole business of aid because Liberia doesn't have. He's right. We don't have manufacturing, but Peter, we could have manufacturing. Why? Because countries like Lesotho, that sits in the middle of South Africa, a lot of companies now in Asia, they're taking manufacturing to places like Lesotho to do garments. One of these days, check the label in the back of your shirt or your clothes, and you will see made in Lesotho. You know why they're doing it? Because of something called AGOA, the African Growth and Opportunity Act, right? It means that if you manufacture something in places like Liberia that qualify for AGOA, you can export that thing over to the US and not pay taxes on it, which is a huge advantage. We should have manufacturing plants in Liberia. I know people would say we don't have the infrastructure, we don't have the roads, we don't have the utilities, we don't have the lights. We can get those things, man. We have an abundance of sun. We can set up a solar panel farm and can generate a whole lot of sun. We have sun. We have an abundance of sun. It can be done. The reason it's not being done because people are not creative enough to be able to chase these things and get it done. So definitely we should be able to manufacture a lot of those things. Don't extract them. And finally, Demisa Moya, she worked over at Goldman Sachs. right there. I was like 15 Broad Street. Goldman Sachs is like 30 Broad Street, downtown Manhattan, Wall Street. She wrote a book called Dead Aid. Too many times African countries start depending on aid that they feel they don't have to do anything. Like Ebola will hit, we feel we don't have to do anything because the world will come and rescue us. COVID will hit, we feel we don't have to do anything because the world will send vaccine to us. Too many times we wait for bad things to happen just so we can get foreign aid. And sometimes we end up eating things like the COVID money and we don't give it to the people. We don't take the rice of foreign aid that is given to us and use it and give it to the people, because people in government end up taking the rice and doing it, using it for their own benefit. We depend too much on foreign aid. We got to get off that whole business of depending on foreign aid and develop our industries. Why would a country like Liberia, where you can stand in your window, throw some seeds, and it will grow, be depending on foreign aid to feed their people? It's absolute nonsense. The U.S. they set up something called the Federal Farm Credit Bank. We can set up a bank similar to that, like in Liberia, to actually help farmers get the revenue, the money they need to buy the equipment they need for mechanized farming. People just don't do these things because they haven't seen it done. They don't know how these high-tech financing actually work. They haven't seen it done. So they're
Actually, we had that under Tarver. It was under him we built the agriculture bank.
Revitalize it.
Yeah, we it was under him we built the agriculture bank. I think the housing. There was so many institutions besides those 30 companies that I talked about earlier that he established. I agree with you. It's and
I think there's another component to this, Larry and Gabriel, that it's not being mentioned, but it's very significant.
Okay.
If we see the successes of most people, it is because of their discipline. If you have to be able to follow a path and do the things required to get you to the next level, like each one of us here, before we could go to the 6th grade, we had to make sure we meet the criteria of the 5th grade. And in business and in industry and all these things we're doing, there is a certain discipline we must embrace if it's going to be successful. A lot of businesses, small-time businesses, fail because of disciplinary issues. We have to change the mindset of people so that they are disciplined enough to do the job properly. And this is where subliminal messaging from the government, from the government programs, from government announcements, they need to be talking to people to change the mindset to produce. We have to make productive people out of ourselves. We are used to, let's face it, we're used to begging all over. We have to change that mindset. And how do you change that mindset? You have to start talking to people. You have to start showing people a different approach. How can they look at life in a different way? And that also coupled with these new programs and bringing up new industries, revitalizing the agriculture bank, all those things, coupled with that, then we can go. But there also has to be a change of attitude, a serious change of attitude. Larry, you mentioned Botswana. I wish we could talk about Botswana. That's another success. People talk about Rwanda all day, but Botswana is a very excellent success story.
Yep.
So, but it has to also, the people, they have to be geared toward this type of development. It won't just happen by magic. All of a sudden, people be productive. No, the whole mindset has to change, and the government can do that by just keep on messaging to people. And I hope we see it in the next administration.
Yeah. Okay. So I think I found the slide here. Let me see if I can share it. So as I said, we did pass the MCC scorecard. However, we did not, we did not, get the grant that supposedly should have come with it, right? The board And this is this is the reason the Millennial Challenge gave for not giving us what we're supposed to get. I think we're supposed to get 250 million. So the board met on December 13, 2023, to select those eligible countries with which the United States, through the MCC, would seek to enter into a Millennium Challenge Compact pursuant to Section 603, 607 of the Act 22, United States Code 7706. The board elected countries, the following eligible countries, such as assistant for fiscal year 2024. Cape Verde. Cape Verde is a Cape Verde is invited by the MCC to develop a compact for the purposes of regional economic integration. The board also selected the following previously selected countries for compact assistance for fiscal year 2024: Cote d'Ivoire, Senegal, Sierra Leone, the Gambia, Togo, and Zambia. Now, I think I have another one here for which goes into further into their rejection or not selecting uh, Liberia. So they give the criteria here. It says, in accordance with the Act and with the report on the criteria and methodology for determining the eligibility of candidate countries for Millennium Challenge Account Assistance on fiscal year 2024, formally submitted to the Congress on September 13, 2023. The selection was based primarily, I want you guys to remember this sentence here, primarily on the country's overall performance in the three broad policy category. Now, these are the three broad policy category. Hopefully, let me write them here because I don't want to go back to this. All right. Ruling justly, uh, Larry, I mean, not Larry, Jimmy, you guys,
Encouraging economic freedom.
right. Ruling justly, encouraging economic freedom, and investing in people, right? So those three. The board relied to the fullest extent possible upon transparent and independent indicator to assess countries' policy performance and demonstrated commitment in these three broad policy categories. Now, those three categories are what that's what they base their selection criteria on. But the following sentence is that the board relied to the fullest extent possible upon transparent and independent indicator to assess countries' policy performance. So your policy performance demonstrated commitment in these three broad policy. So that or those are their conclusion in terms of, or their rationale in terms of why we did not get the compact grant.
Yeah.
And I think we may have celebrated a little bit too early when that came out. I think you saw the former minister of, or the current minister of finance doing what we call the battle cry. He sang some kind of rebel song, which means when you interpret it, we're going to war. I don't know what he's going to war for, but he's saying that song, meaning that in celebration that he, I thought that he was going to get, or we were going to get the 250 million. Unfortunately, we did not meet that criteria. Now, when I saw that come out, I was taken aback a little because I too expected that we're supposed to get it until I saw the the criteria or the rationale behind why we never got it approved for the grant. What were you guys' thoughts on this whole debacle as to why we didn't get it? For me, I think it's a little political, but I don't want to get too much. I want to hear you guys.
No, it's to me it was pretty simple. Maybe because I'm wired kind of engineering wide. It was very simple.
Mhm.
If you looked at the things, yeah, we passed.
Right.
And passing means, I guess, you're passing more categories.
Mhm.
But just like we remembered in school, some of us used to get high grades in PE.
Pass with condition.
But
Yeah.
you get high grades.
You used to get that?
little bit. It depends where I was,
Yeah.
but or get maybe high grade
Right.
in history. But when you get ready to go to LU, right, and take an exam to go to LU, they only care about math and English.
Yeah.
So certain categories bear more gravity, way more gravity. And I think the reason why we're not because we failed in one category, it was glaring, and that was governance. What you could pass on all those other. I wish we could bring it up to sure we could see what all Liberia passes. But if you failing in governance,
Hmm.
game over. That's how I saw it. I don't know about you, Larry.
Larry.
Do you know how bad of a administration you have to be in a competition with other bad countries and government, and you fail in the governance sector?
Misery
Yeah,
loves company.
because the whole MCC thing, it's great in the fact that it can help to kind of kick up a little economic activity. So I would not rely on it because it's not consistent. It's not, because for me, the first thing I would want to do is, okay, we've won this MCC in the past. I want to see the data that support the amount of economic activity that was generated from this MCC. I kind of want to see this MCC we won in the past. What did we do that was right? What did we do that was wrong? So hopefully, if we were to win another MCC, we can emphasize doing the right things so it can generate economic activity for the people. Because the last MCC, it looks like it was just wasted. It didn't seem to have generated enough economic activity to be sustainable, right? So I'm not too crazy or excited about the MCC. I want to look for something that is more sustainable, more that will lead to consistent economic growth. But the fact that the MCC is judging you in a category with a whole bunch of other bad countries, I would not be very proud of that. Sure, you see, that's why people get excited about the MCC. Botswana doesn't even qualify for the MCC because their GDP per capita is not at that low level. Botswana is surviving. They're doing very well. But they've only been around what? They got their independence in 1966. They're doing extremely well. They don't rely on things like the MCC because they have enough economic activity that is making the people do well. There's so many countries don't rely on a grant from the MCC. It goes back again to this reliance on grants for survival. So I saw the first time they were dancing when they passed the MCC. It was embarrassing. It was actually embarrassing to see grown men, government officials celebrating because someone decided to give them aid that will more than likely be run by foreign NGOs, and the money will end up being remitted out of your country.
Yep.
You dancing for something you may not
exactly.
So they're not even
exactly
because the foreign NGOs would come to Liberia, end up doing the work. They would pay their people, and the people remit the money to their families back in America.
Yep.
So it's not going to generate. That's why I say I want to see the evidence of how the MCC has led to economic benefit for the region, for the country that it was given to. Sierra Leone has won MCC. The crazy thing is you sanction Sierra Leone at the same time they're winning MCC compact. It doesn't seem to make any sense, right? But people were out there dancing and celebrating long before they got the final word that they were going to get this grant, and look what happens.
And that's exactly. So we set the bar so low. It's so superficial. We have to do much more. It's just so we do a little something that we're ready to dance. We got way far to go.
I know you guys are asking about
scorecard. You are ranked based on other countries that you're in the same category with. So if all of you in that little bottom 40%, it doesn't mean that, if you get the green, it doesn't necessarily mean that, you have done extremely well. It simply means that everybody in that bottom has done poorly like you, that now you're passing because they're just not good enough. I don't know, man. They don't pay attention to this stuff. Look, I will put my time and effort into something that would generate sustainable economic growth for the people. Look, we can't continue down a path where people remain food insecure. It's just silly. You can't do that because back in 2013, Madam Sirleaf made a speech in Europe saying that, look, the number of young people that we have in our country, if we don't do something to generate jobs for them, it can lead
You're
to a
trouble.
crisis.
Exactly.
Yeah,
It would lead to a crisis
Exactly.
because they would start protesting and they would want to see action. Because here's the thing, Jimmy. Here's the thing, Gabriel. Liberia is one of those countries in sub-Saharan Africa where the population is growing at a rate of over 2% per year.
Yeah.
Most countries is like 0.01, 0.02 something. Liberia is the population. We have a young population that is growing rapidly. Monrovia is overpopulated.
Very.
And it's spreading out. But when you have a population growing over 2% and your poverty reduction is less than 0.4%, you're putting more people into poverty year over year.
Every year.
To be at the same rate, you're not at the same rate. Your job creation has to be at a rate that is far greater than the population growth.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly.
It's not happening.
So I know you guys asked for this, so I went to go dig it up. So these are the area that we passed. So the fiscal policy, inflation, political rights, civil rights, and civil liberties, control of corruption, rule of law, freedom of information, trade policy.
But look at those two. Look at those two we failing. Regulatory quality. What we're talking, what our legislature is doing. What are the regulators doing in our country? We've got 46%. Government effectiveness. In other words, their policies, the way you spend money, 30%. You don't even make 30. They're not even government grade. They used to give you 50 out of 100. This one we make 30. 30. That's like, so are we surprised that we didn't make the list?
Can I tell you how bad the other people were? And look at where you ranked, that you were so bad that you couldn't even get past that percentage. It's shameful. But the implications for a boycott is it would have been a little drop in the bucket, but I think mentally, it would have sent a signal that maybe the international community will be willing to work with him to a certain extent.
Yeah.
So it would have been some type of a mental benefit as well. But I wouldn't have put all my faith into that MCC compact grant.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. The next topic here, let me see if we have any comments here.
Actual factual say he's surprised to see we pass. You're right. I'm shocked to see we pass freedom of information request. I think my man Isaac Tukpa will agree with you on that one, because I remember he was one of the very first people who was filing freedom of information requests, and they told him to send money to buy the paper to print the thing on.
Wow.
There was some ridiculous request they made to him, and I always would ask Isaac, did they ever respond to you? Yeah, so actual factual, I totally agree with you. I'm shocked. I don't know who said, they passed that thing. They don't share information in that place. It's a joke.
Yeah.
That's not the reality on the ground.
Okay. So the next topic here I wanted us to talk about, I don't know. I don't have any. I don't have a lot on it. But I think it was reported there was an article written about that. For some reason, I couldn't pull up that article. So there was supposedly, yes, I think there was either, and you guys in the comment here, please keep me honest here. Keep us honest here if we're wrong. I think there was an article that, I think the president may have issued some kind of executive order banning rubber exportation out of the country. And I think at the beginning of the show, I said that some of the things that he's now doing, whether to look at some of the contract, the concession, the ban on export of rubber, those are things you're supposed to do the moment he should have done the moment he sat in that seat, right? It's kind of late in the game to the point that you have a few more weeks to leave, that you're doing all these measures. So I don't know what his strategy is or his game plan are for, putting a ban on rubber when we've been exporting rubber, since, I don't know, the Firestone agreement. So what are you guys' thought on that? Why do you guys think he issued this ban on exportation? Was there any kind of
Yeah, there was
breach in the contract,
there were
or
there were talks that it was in retaliation, that it was in retaliation of the sanctioned officers of his government. So he put a ban on the exportation of unprocessed rubber. Unprocessed rubber, you know the rubber, you take the rubber from the tree, you tap it, and then you get the latex out of it, and then that's most of that is being shipped over. So that he's looking at, we putting it, latex going through a couple of stages of production here,
yeah,
value added processes, so that it will create jobs and generate more revenue here. But doing that requires a whole program. It's not just say, okay, I ban it. No, no. We are going to start. You develop the program. This is what we're working toward. And at this certain time, we want to stop to complete halt the exploitation of raw latex. That is how you do it. It's just not issuing the law. There has to be a whole thing, a whole program developed, a whole. You need to write it so people can understand it and embrace it and know what they're working toward. These things don't work in isolation. It works through a full thought out process and projection, which is very important. What if this going to be? Is this going to be good? Is it going to cut down on our export, or is it going to increase it? You have to project it, and that comes with market studies. It comes with a lot of stuff, and then you're just simply given an order. Even if the order was in a way beneficial in the long run, but if you don't do it properly, then you can hurt yourself. You know, so it has to be done in a way that will be progressive for the country, not out of retaliation.
Jimmy. Larry. What are your thoughts on that?
So let me get this straight.
All right.
And you know me, I'm from Yucatan. You know, well, things are a little bit different. But let me get this straight.
You're quite.
Let me get this straight. So you sanctioned my officials for alleged corrupt action. So to retaliate against you, I decide to chop off the hand that feeds me. I mean, we're looking at income generation in the country, and to retaliate, you decide to put a stop to one of the key driving forces for revenue generation in the country. That's how you retaliate for them sanctioning your officials for alleged corruption. So you retaliate by cutting off the hand that feeds you. If that's not the most asinine executive order I've ever seen, it's just ridiculous. And I don't believe the president, and maybe Dennis Jha or Anthony Sayed can have a show and bring maybe that Councilor Jala or some of the other councilors on to see if the president has that sort of power to do something like that, especially when you're in a sitting duck position within your administration.
Exactly.
He's a sitting duck president.
Yep.
There's no way he should have that level of power to do something like that. So if that is in fact what he did, and the legislator is sitting there and letting this slide, hoping, okay, let's just wait it out until the next administration comes in, it sends a bad signal, right? Whenever someone takes an action, there should be an immediate opposite or some legal ramifications to whatever that person is doing. Don't just let it slide. So, tie him up in court. Tie him up in court and have that thing reversed, because it's absolute nonsense. It sends a message out to investors that Liberia cannot be trusted, because a president can arbitrarily, unilaterally take this sort of action with an executive order, which is kind of overarching. An executive order kind of bypasses the legislator. You're sort of making your own laws without going through the legislative process. That's what it does, right? So it's absolute nonsense,
Yeah. For me, I thought it was. I didn't understand the logic behind it. Just
because there's none.
At this point, if you didn't do anything up until now, just wait your turn until you take an exit. Why
Sitting duck,
complicate things with
president, just ride
I
it
hope
out, man.
the incoming president reverses that, and if hopefully we don't get
Stop with that nonsense.
yeah, hopefully
I
we
know
don't
if
get
he's I don't know if he's a sitting duck or he's a lame duck, but
Yeah, lame duck.
but
there is a duck.
Yeah,
but
I was joking with
but
someone about that sitting duck thing, and you see what happens? It's stuck in my head. Thank you, Jimmy. It's a lame duck.
yeah,
I call him a sitting
but
duck.
the thing is, there's a whole lot of little knee jerk things he's doing right now,
Yeah,
and it's ill advised. I don't know why his advisors are not cautioning him um, in this respect. It's wrong, and it's not. And just like Larry was saying, it's not wholesome. It shows that you don't have structure in your
yeah,
government. You have to have structure before people trust you. That element of trust again. If they want to see if things going on, before. I don't know. You know this, Gabriel. You guys must have been pretty young, but just before 1979, just in 1979, just before 1980,
mm,
Kawasaki Steel. They're huge. Kawasaki is a huge uh,
the
steel
bike.
producing.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes, but they produce a lot of they produce steel.
as well. Oh
They
wow, I
were
didn't know that. Okay.
oh yeah, huge Japanese company. They were about to put a $1 billion steel furnace facility in Liberia. They were working on that. You know what that would mean? We have iron ore already. Now we come and start smelting steel. We come and
Brilliant.
start exporting steel. And they were willing to take those days. $1 billion was worth way more than it was in 1979, 78. Worth way more. And they were willing to take that chance because Liberia has stability. The other thing, if you want people to trust you and have confidence in you, if you have stability. So I'm going to give the president this, that the fact that he conceded and bowing out, it is showing a lot more stability. Because before you people really start putting big money in your country, they're gonna have to be assured that it is not going to go for nothing. And so stability is one of the key things to have if you want to be an attractive investment. And so that's the good thing about it. But some of these knee-jerk decisions that he's making, I think they're ill-advised.
Yeah. Okay. I I don't want us to stay too much on that. Um, for the sake of time, maybe we can take this one here and then we can wrap up. Um, so I think we may have alluded to this, but maybe we can, you know, flush it out. Any ideas on these and flush it out, and then we'll wrap up. So as I think I stated at the beginning of the show, we have the current president-elect in Washington. Uh, there is, one thing about Liberia's social verse, they never disappoint. There was, pictures of him getting his suit tailored, pictures of him on meeting with the World Bank, the IMF, the USAID, and all of that. So we know exactly in terms of the order in which things are happening, which is good to a point, Um, and I think there is mixed reaction to that, depending what side of the political aisle you're on, whether you're in the ruling, the incoming, or you're on the, you know, opposition, as to why he making the trip to the World Bank. I have kind of I'm a little bit indifferent to it. I don't really care for it. I think it's necessary, but for the purpose for which. So I have my little, but it's not so much of a critical thought process on that. So I want to hear you guys' thought in terms of his trip here. Was what was it necessary? If it was necessary, if it were you, what would you do? Or if imagine yourself being an advisor to the president, would that be something you would advise? Or even if you were to advise him to do that, what strategy would you lay on the table meeting with these MDBs, millennial multilateral development banks and international partners?
I'll let Larry take the lead on that one.
Yeah.
You sure?
Yes.
Well, first of all, I don't know. Riverside Pro is saying that he's in Riverside County in Wisconsin. I didn't know there was a Riverside County in Wisconsin. Riverside Pro, you caught my attention on that woman.
Yeah.
In Wisconsin. More
If you
power to
believe
you,
that,
sir.
if you believe that, I got a jet to
I
sell you.
know. He's watching from Cestus Tower in Riverside County, Wisconsin. Somebody please arrest that Riverside Pro. Look, it's nice. It's nice to meet with your friends and partners in Washington, D.C., because at the end of the day, without a shadow of a doubt, the U.S. government pumps millions and millions into Liberia. And when we had Ebola, the U.S. government was there. When we had COVID, the U.S. government was there. So it's great. The photo ops looks fantastic. I'm not mad at them. Fine. But I wouldn't spend so much time with all of the photo ops, because right now you really cannot make any decisions that will kind of impact. You can kind of plan in advance of what you want to do. But the U.S. government have their hands involved in so many things right now. They're fighting on Capitol Hill trying to put money in the budget for Israel, the war between Israel and Hamas. That grabbed the U.S. attention right now. There's even issues with the proxy wars because the U.S. have to deal with issues that are taking place in Yemen. So the U.S. is focused on spending money on that as well. The U.S. also is trying to fight and get money over to the Ukrainians, right? There are issues going on in Ukraine. At the same time, with all of the issues going on between Israel, Hamas, even in Ukraine, a lot of us who are kind of paying attention to the financial sector, we kind of see a little bit, there might be some risk of maybe another increasing in inflation, in prices, because based on what those terrorists are doing, hijacking ships and things of that sort, that can lead to price increases as well. So the U.S. got its hands involved in a lot of stuff, not to say they're going to abandon Liberia. What I would have also done was set aside time for the vice president to meet people over at places like Morgan Stanley. Come to places like where I work. We got a lot of friends over there, JP Morgan Chase on Wall Street, right? Let's talk to some of these investment banks to see how we can actually have a consistent stream of financing for Liberia. Let's talk to maybe some hedge fund managers. Let's see if we can maybe set something up where we can be able to raise some capital, get Liberians in the diaspora to invest. And this is something I think, Gabriel, you've mentioned as well, some type of a bond or something that Liberians can tap into. Get some hedge fund managers to get involved in that. So I will not just go to Main Street. I will also go to Wall Street and spend some time because that's where the money is. The World Bank gets some of its money from Wall Street because they sell these World Bank bonds over on Wall Street, right? So they can get some of that money from there. So I would split my time between the two, but more importantly, I would try to see if I can have a town hall, an online town hall with Liberians in the diaspora to encourage them to come back home and invest. I would have gotten online town hall, encourage Liberians in the diaspora, please. That, my friend, is the source of a lot of revenue for this government. So I would have taken some time and done those three things: Main Street, Wall Street, Town Hall.
Yeah. Before Jimmy, before you come in, I want to. This person in this chat said this. I second that. I second that, and it just based on what you just said, I think that's exactly how I feel. That's I absolutely agree with you. I don't know how credible this individual is, but if it is, I hope.
Let me tell you that real quick, because some people have been saying I just spent time in community college. So the community college thing was just to kind of give back. It wasn't something I was doing to earn a living. You don't earn a living working in community college. I make money because I work as a vice president for JP Morgan since I was 17 years old. I was in the belly. So when 1999, when the Glass-Steagall Act was repealed, JP Morgan as an investment bank could merge with commercial banks. They tapped me to head over to New York to help to work with Chase. If you go on my page, you will see some of the people that I work with: Al G, Anselmo Gubulando, Mike Moore, all these guys that I work with on Wall Street. Went over to Chase back then, worked with them. When we took over First USA Bank One, I was sent over to Chicago, late in Chicago, flying to Chicago every morning to go to work. When the financial crisis ended and we took over Bear Stearns, I was tapping in to go to New York to see what was going on, to kind of tell the people the JP Morgan way. I've been in the financial sector my entire life. That's what I do.
I think, what is it, over 40 years of experience, right?
Yeah, I don't want to age myself. That's what it is.
I don't know if I don't know any Liberian who has that much experience in banking as lengthy as that.
Well, I've seen it. I've seen banking. I eat banking for breakfast. I eat banking for breakfast. I enjoy it. But at the same time, I'm an IT guy because I have a degree in information technology, and I helped build a lot of the systems that you see JP Morgan using today. I was part of the team that helped develop those systems and test it. A lot of the straight-through processing that you see happening at JP Morgan, I was part of that group as well. So not just finance, but I spent a lot of time in information technology. I can write code I can do SQL, I can do Python, I can do data science like Power BI and Tableau.
Yeah,
so
I saw your Power BI. I think one time we had a show and you did this Power BI live thing here, in live as we were doing the show. You were putting that up there. And I mean, I put this out there because I agree with this individual, even though I don't put these out there. I think in a way you're a little bit too modest with,
I don't talk about it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Most people was like, hey,
I don't talk about it at all.
Me knowing you in the background, I know you have that much experience, but you don't put that out there because
Yeah. If I were to come in now,
one thing, the person who's going to be the finance minister is going to be walking into a lot of booby trap that Samuel Twain is leading.
Yeah,
a lot of booby trap. There's a lot of crap he's done that you don't know when you get in there. There's going to be a pitfall waiting for you.
A lot of holes. Then you will find out all the papers that got burned. Remember some papers got burned the other day? Have
Jimmy.
I heard that before? Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Remember some papers got burned the other day? Look,
a lot of shady stuff.
Yeah, just like you see, Larry is well capable of heading the institution. He's been doing it when you've been doing something for that long, it becomes second nature to you. You become a wealth of knowledge. You can even write books. That's what happens when you do something for such a long
time. Jimmy, not to interrupt you, high level. Gabriel's sitting here as a vice president too at a major bank.
Yeah, right. So, and this is what I think will be key. When you talk about him going around visiting in the U.S., I think hitting the ground running, if I want to give him that, I give him a plus. Okay, he's hitting the ground running. He's not waiting till he takes office. He's already doing it. Of course, people say there were for other reasons, but let's forget that. He's hitting the ground running. So I look at his entourage. I look at who he's with, because as a president, you need brains. I mean, you need some sharp people around you, very, very sharp people around you. So I'm looking at what because there's certain things he's been into agriculture. Now we've been talking about finance all day long. So yeah, if he's going to be talking about some people who know finance, he's going to be talking about banks. He's going to need somebody on his team who's well versed in finance to help him along the way in the discussions. So when I look at the team, I see Amara Cornet there. Okay, so he's had some experience in finance, and I see the other people. That his choice of cabinet, I think that's going to be so huge. We saw the last administration struggle because a lot of the chief officers were not masters of their trade. Of the trade or the seat they found themselves in. And neither did they show inclination to learn. I don't want to tell you about my experience. I've tried to talk to some of them. I've been in technology for over 30 years, power, telecommunications, information technology, and they wouldn't even talk, and they didn't know. So I kind of wonder, I said, but why? Why wouldn't you even take free knowledge, free information, people giving you service? So it will be very important who he selects, because that will be key. If we don't use you don't need narrow-minded people. You need people open, who are not afraid of intelligent people and well-qualified people, who will welcome them in so they can work together. Um, you got I'm at a stage I wouldn't want to really work. I only would work if the highest job I wanted would be an advisor. But if they will definitely need people with skill sets, outside Liberia and inside Liberia. I know there's a tendency that a lot of times they say to people, you're in America and now you'll come take our jobs, and there's been a lot of that going on, and that is unfair. And if I were doing it, I would make a certain criteria before you take a job like that. But you still need the people. You still need expertise, and he's gonna have to reach out to different kind of people, and we need to teach each other. We need to carry on a campaign. I was in Ethiopia when they had the revolution, and before you could get a degree, you had to go and teach. And that program educated masses of people, because had it not been for that, they didn't have enough people for teachers. They didn't have, but all the university students became teachers, and they carried out that program for 2, 3, 4 years. Before you get your degree, you have to go teach, and you teach for little or nothing, but you're giving back, and that raised the educational level. We need programs like this. We need to teach our people, give the people the knowledge they will need for the rest of their lives, and they will build Liberia. So I see him. The people he's going to have around him is going to be crucial, and very instrumental. So it's a great opportunity, and so we're just sitting back to see what he does. Larry will be a very good choice.
Yeah, I agree too. But and the reason why I agree is because you don't just need somebody with public finance background. You need somebody who has a combination of two, and also with the tech background he has, where
Yeah,
we like you say, somebody you just talk about burning papers. We need to graduate from that. Like, we're in the 21st century. We need to graduate from doing things on paper and put everything digital, and make everything digital. But let's see. Like I said,
yeah.
you're picking a cabinet from IKEA, or you picking a cabinet from Home Depot. You make your choice. um, let's jump into the comment here so we can wrap up. I
Okay.
don't know if you guys have you guys been reading through the comments. Um, uh, let me see. Where are we? Where are we? Where are we? Hmm. Man, has your ancestor tower. This guy. All right.
I
So
wrote,
Rivers
mhm.
said, I can't wait
I
to
wrote
hear.
as well.
Yeah, he said,
Yeah.
I can't wait to hear Joseph Boyka, Minister of Finance, to hear his
Ancestors
pick for
Tower.
Minister of Finance. I hope he perform miracles. And well, indeed. Uh, he said many people in the diaspora are reluctant to invest in Liberia. They always find excuses.
I
Do you,
don't
do
know
you
if it's
guys
so
find
much
that
of
true?
excuses. I don't think it's excuses. It's when
Yeah.
you see, there's a difference between speculation and investing,
Mm-hmm.
right? When you're speculating, you're taking chances. When you're
Yep.
investing, you've done your due diligence, you're checking things out, you're looking at, especially the risk, right? Investing is all about managing the risk. The risk in Liberia is just so high that certain people are not willing to take that risk, the risk of losing your money. So that's why people sometimes will not invest in Liberia, because there's no safety net, you know. So that's why, like over here in the States, people will invest because there's some type of a safety net, not necessarily the FDIC, but there's always like something you can fall back on. Because if the person over here steals the money, more than likely the Securities and Exchange Commission will go after them, prosecute them, put them in jail, and maybe get some of that money back. I haven't seen anything like that in Liberia, so it's not excuses. Some people just cannot bear that level of risk
Mhm.
in Liberia.
And we have this other guy. He said, I saw the, uh, sorry for referring to you, the other guy, Ja Eddie. I saw the
Yeah.
budget was just approved by the current president. Was it? Um, which period does it cover? I hope up folks will not look for blame that they did not draft the budget. Um,
But wait,
is it?
wait a minute. Let
It,
me speak into that. Let me
it
speak to that
wasn't
real
approved. It
quick.
was drafted, not approved.
Yeah,
Right.
drafted. Maybe he says draft because it also has to be go through the legislature,
Yeah,
and
it
then
wasn't
and
approved.
that has not happened. So I think the president signs it into law after it's been reviewed by the legislature. So no, maybe the draft budget has been submitted. But like I said, they've been summoning the finance minister and he has not appeared. So I'm sure they got questions. I'm
Yeah.
sure they got a lot of questions.
Oh, and this is actual factual. You know, I keep saying I want to uncover this guy, whoever this is, identity, but I haven't been able to do that. If you're listening, you're looking at us, I'm coming for you, whoever that is. Like Liberia needs a law like the E-Government Act of the US, Modernization and Information Sharing uh of the US. Modernization and information sharing is needed within the government. Um, yeah, I think that goes to what Jimmy was saying that, we heard some people, you know, burning documents. I think we need to get away from that. If we,
I want to share one more thing with you guys.
right.
I went to a meet. They wanted to digitize the government, put it all in digital. The government is still run by a lot of on paper or silo computers. They're just on a one little server or some computer somewhere. They wanted to digitize where everything's online.
Hmm.
And I went to a meeting, and you can see that even if you want to do something, there's a lot of fighting. A lot of people, the first thought, and this has to be this. I wish this administration realizes it. The first thought is how much money I can get from this thing.
Hmm.
That's it. That's what everybody is mainly concerned about. So when someone is coming in, they think that they're coming in to get the money. Even if it was not even the money, it was just to bring free expertise. But everybody's is about how much money I can get. And if you're driven by pecuniary or you just want money, it's not wholesome, and you're afraid of everybody else because you think they're going to get the money. So they're going to have to be very careful because no matter what you try to do there, the first thought, I mean, this is just my observation. The first thought is how much money can I get out of this, and that's not going to work. It's not going to work. We need to do something for sacrificially for our country before our country can move ahead.
Yeah. We have another Flomo Livingstone. He says, so what the case on the document that were burned at the minute? I think Jimmy, this question is for you. What are the case on the document that were burned at the Ministry of Finance? Um,
According
I think he
to
wants more detail. In other words, all right.
according to there was nothing, no any important papers were damaged.
Yeah,
Okay, that is all. That's the only report I got. No, nothing of any importance was damaged.
yeah,
Why was there a fire there, and which office? Exact all the details. And that is probably another thing that this freedom of information. Somebody talk about that. I think we need some detailed answers when these cases come up. They are allowed to go to rest. I don't know. They go somewhere like some graveyard for cases. After a while, you hear about them. All of a sudden, they just go away and into the sunset. You don't hear about them anymore. I think we need closure. We need closure on these issues. We need to know what happened, even if we fail. The idea when you fail, when you re-examine your steps, you know better and not to do certain things the next time. But without getting closure on these issues, without getting detailed information, fact information about what happened, I think we're losing. We're losing every single time something like that occurs. So
we need to see what the results of our actions, and we need the information disseminated so that we can all have closure on the issue, and not just allow it to disintegrate, just go away, and we forget about it.
Yeah. All right. I think this is it.
Let
I
me
don't have
answer
any more.
Morris Masterquest question out there. He's asking me if I ever served as a consultant to Samuel Twett. No,
Oh,
never
this
worked
one.
for, never worked for Samuel Twett. And one time I mentioned in a post that Liberia no country has ever developed without developing the financial sector.
Yeah.
Samuel Twett doesn't believe in that. He believes that countries
Is that Larry?
can in fact develop without having a sound financial sector.
Yeah.
Is so we're on two different wavelengths. Me coming from a professional finance background, and he's coming from some other background that I'm not clear what it is. So I never worked as a consultant for him. I'm not even sure anyone in their right mind would work as a consultant for him. Some people have, but
Yeah.
it's not in my league to do something like that. It's just silly.
Yeah. All right. Let me see. There's another one here. Ja Eddie. He said, I worked in sectors in Liberia where we outsource key tasks to India and Philippines. Same approach is used by some companies in the US to outsource jobs. So what could be done in Liberia to get some such jobs, since English is our first language? This could help to employ people. He's talking about. Do you guys agree with that?
People have mentioned this. For us, English is our first language, right?
No, the first part though. The first part. I know the second part. I do agree. The first part where he said they actually outsource some jobs to India and the Philippines for Liberia.
Well, we're not online that much, but I can tell you this, and this is the thing that hurt me more than anything in Liberia. Any kind of real technical job, engineer, like the people who put in the fiber optics, these are all foreign people. I look at a young man. I went to the office. I think what they call it was somebody they were working with Google Fiber. Okay, I just wanted to know what they do. Who's doing it and what they're doing. All foreigners. I'm like, why? and they tell me and they tell me some companies. That was the complaint in Ellen administration. They said they can't find qualified Liberians to do these jobs.
They're not looking enough. They're not looking enough. It's the same excuse.
Well, maybe they're looking locally. I don't know, but they say they can't find qualified Liberians.
I think he's talking about some IT related work that's been sent over to India and the Philippines, because that's one thing. Philippines doesn't have a whole lot of natural resources and stuff. But what Philippines have done is, in fact, they have developed a sector where they're doing a lot of services, providing a lot of services to financial institutions. So the second part that he talks about, what could be done for Liberia to get money. So there's another wave of globalization happening, right? If you're in the US, you notice that you're not going to find a whole lot of factories. A lot of the factories went over to Asia because of the low cost of labor in Asia. So that was the first wave of globalization. All the jobs fled to Asia because labor was just so cheap. But labor in Africa, especially places like Liberia, is far cheaper right now than in China and some of those other places. You can, in fact, have another wave of globalization, which some companies are doing right now. They're taking some factories over to, I don't know, maybe like Kenya or Ghana. I'm hearing car manufacturing taking places in there. So there's another wave of globalization happening. Eddie is raising a great point. We're kind of a little bit behind. They're not preparing ourselves for that globalization wave that is happening to snatch some of those jobs. But Eddie, in order to do that, we have to change the amount of money we're investing in education. We have to boost the education budget so we can prepare our young people right. You see, right now, to create jobs, we don't have the IT and technical skills for the young people right now, but we can prepare them for the future. What we can do right now is set them up to do work in the construction industry. If we build our economy, especially on the fiscal side, if we do it right, We start creating jobs. Where we have a lot of manual labor in the construction sector, building houses, road projects, all that stuff. At the same time, we're training the young people then in IT, in customer service, in other things, where that other wave of globalization will come from India. I used to call people in India and wake them up all the time because India was doing a lot of our accounting reconciliation and stuff. That stuff can come to Liberia. We educate a lot of young people. They're very smart young brothers and sisters in Liberia. People who are accountants, people who are very good at math, people who are very good at So Eddie, we can do it, but we have to invest in it. It's not going to happen because we ran outside. Yeah, it's not going to happen by miracle. We ran outside. Was screaming for manna from heaven. We got George manna. And nothing happened with that. So let's go ahead now and see if we can invest in the education sector and get that globalization.
Right, and that's a capacity building point, and that's one of the things we failed in with the MCC. We have to build our people. We have to impart knowledge. That's what capacity building is all about. And this is why I was saying there needs to be a serious campaign launched to empower our people, to give them the ability to do different high skill jobs. We are smart. We can do it. Liberians leave Liberia from humble beginnings, and we'll go to the best schools here. I mean, when I say Ivy League and all, it doesn't even matter. But still, somebody's got to give them the opportunity to learn, and that is what's missing.
That's it. Oh, and Mr. Massaquet, no, I'm not getting upset, buddy. I'm not getting upset. John Morley, I've heard so many positive things about John Morley. The guy name rings when it comes to things like competencies, when it comes to things like honesty. You hear John Morley name in there consistently. I never had the pleasure of meeting John Morley. I would love to meet him sometime just to shake his hand and say, look, man, I heard so many good things about you. I just want to come and shake your hand. But I've never really met him. But I've heard a lot of positive things about him, and it sounds like somebody that he needs to be doing what it is that I believe Boyka is kind of going to pick him to do. So he has a pretty good reputation. Somebody that I think Boyka really needs a lot, and I wish him all the best in whatever it is that he does for Boyka.
Yeah, and I hope they don't fight him because I've already heard them beginning to fight. I don't know why we fight each other. Yeah, they're already beginning. What has he managed before? I'm like, the guy was selected as an auditor by an international group. He must have some credentials. We all went to the same school, so I know he does have that.
He's a CPA. I think a CPA.
It's not easy to get one of those.
Exactly. So come on, but we fight each other too. So there's going to be that. They got to be aware. There's going to be a lot of fighting, a lot of pushback. That's what that's what we do. So they're just going to have to weather the storm and full steam ahead.
That's what happens when you're forming a team, right?
Yeah. If you're building an army, there's always going to be an opposing force.
That's right.
All right. I think that does it for this session, guys. I would like to hear your closing comments or final thoughts on it could be any of these topics we talked about before we wrap up.
Yeah, I'll take like 60 seconds and close real quick, Jamie. I will just say there's one final thing. That whole 2024 budget, that's absolute garbage. JMB and his team need to really take a close look at that and make sure that it's not something that's going to set the stage for his administration, because I think they'll be starting on a bad footing if they were to follow with that budget coming from someone who has some of the largest budget shortfall in the country. And also, I would encourage them to not just focus strictly on Washington in terms of trying to get funding, but they can focus on some other things before they even come to power right now. Number one, you don't need foreign lobbyists. The current administration was spending around $3 million a year, or proposed to be spending $3 million a year. Liberia has, on a per capita basis, Liberia had more foreign lobbyists than any other country in Africa. I think Ghana probably had one, that was Reba. Foreign lobbyists do not lead to economic development in your country. Anybody can set up an appointment with any government official in Washington, D.C. You don't need foreign lobbyists. Take a look at that foreign lobbyist list and cut up all those contracts, especially the most recent one with ballot partners. You don't need that nonsense, right? focus on trying to get money from Wall Street. Wall Street is where the money is. If you need people to go down there to Wall Street and make some friends for you, definitely you need to make that happen. So, but pay close attention because you're coming in. There are some pitfalls and landmines that are being laid by this outgoing administration. If you don't bring a competent team when you first put them on the pitch for the first half, you're going to fall so far behind. The expectations from the Liberian people are so high right now that you will be trying to play catch up, and you may never, ever catch up. So just my little 2 cents.
Okay, thank you. Great point. Jimmy.
Yeah. People look at it as we get problem. No. We don't have problem. We have opportunities. There's an opportunity there. And it's gonna be a challenge, but if it wasn't challenged, then it wouldn't be worth doing. So the only thing, they need to be open-minded when they come in. I noticed we have a tendency of excluding each other. We love this excluding. From the time I remember, they always talk about they leaving me out because I'm not from this family, or they're leaving me out because I'm not from this tribe, and all that kind of stuff. We can't practice these exclusionary tactics to keep people out. We need to be open-minded. If somebody is really merit-based, like Larry was saying, if someone deserves the position, give them an opportunity to do it. Or if they're just going to help, give them an opportunity to help, because a lot of people, that's all they want to do. So I think they need to be open-minded and not allow themselves to get in those same trappings that have caught up with other administrations.
Yeah. Well, I think that does it for today's session. Any final Christmas messages for the audience because I think we have Christmas in 2 days. So any final messages for the audience? No.
Yeah, be safe out there, man. And thanks for being a great host, Gabriel. You really kept the show
Gabriel,
going.
it was good.
You, sir.
Yeah, I love doing this. Without further ado, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching us. Hopefully you were able to take away something from here. You were able to thank you for your comments, your perspectives as well. Christmas in 2 days. On our end, we usually give a lot of gifts in Liberia. I think it's kind of our version like the Thanksgiving. So you eat too much out there. Don't eat too much. Don't steal anybody's chicken to make your Christmas good. If the economy too hard this year, just wait for next year. Joe Biden coming, you'll make it good for next year.
I'm not joking. Gabriel, people pot used to get messy on the fire, man. You never heard that?
I don't know where you're coming from with that, Jimmy.
I'm not joking. The whole pot can disappear on the fire.
Oh my goodness.
No,
All right, guys.
This was not good this year. Please wait for next year. Just hold on for next year, and we'll see you here next Saturday.
Right.
Without further ado,
thanks, Jimmy. Good job.
See you next week. Ciao.
Right.
We all Liberia. Liberia is our home.